in the proverbial rearview mirror.
And it's time. Yub nub. Yub nub. Yub. Star Wars podcast.
Yub.
Welcome to the Star Wars Reporter podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm the guy that can sing, obviously.
Well, obviously, you're the one that can sing, yes.
And the other two guys are the handsome guys, starting with handsome bachelor number one.
Hey, I am the Last Jedi.
And handsome but not bachelor, Todd.
Hello there. I am not a Jedi fan.
He's got the dice finally.
Yeah, you saw it, right? This might be one of my topics in the show today, possibly. Right here, the dice.
Well, yeah, because it does come up, I guess. So welcome everyone. We are doing I'm so excited to be talking about our next look back at The Last Jedi, episode 8 of Star Wars. But before we get into that, just want to remind everyone that you can check us out at StarWarsReporter.com for all the latest news. We have actually a different logo and everything now on the site. I should update that.
Looks really sweet, man.
Sweet. Yes. And make sure that you follow us on all our social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So, guys, also too, if you are tuning in and watching us live, make sure you leave comments of what you think of The Last Jedi, good or bad, and we will, we'll look through to see what kind of stuff we're going to get that we're going to feature. But
this is by far, as we get going, the most controversial Star Wars film ever made. It's the one that I think has the most split. You either love this movie or you don't like it at all, or possibly hate it. That's what I find. I've in the film community, I've heard so many people say that this is the best Star Wars movie ever made, bar none. They say. Right. I don't understand it, but here we are going to break it down and find out why we think it is what it is.
Yeah. So again, we are going to be starting with, or I always do this with the movie poster, right? I always like those banner movie posters. Man, that poster looks so good.
It does. The red looks fantastic.
Well, let's get into the movie.
Let's get in the movie, shall we? So already James jumps in here. James already has an opinion. Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie and also the one I hate the most.
Wow. Yeah. James sounds like a really confused teenage girl with that answer.
No, I actually agree with that. And to the point when the first time I saw The Last Jedi, by the way, this was the Thursday night. It was before the onslaught, everybody. I saw it that first Thursday night. And I remember up until that point too, like people forget, there was like a decent buzz about it too, actually. It wasn't anything, what was going to happen. And my first viewing, I was actually like, I was on board. I enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of little nitpicky things, the stuff that we were talking about off camera, which I know we're going to get to, like the Earth phrases and all that kind of stuff we're going to talk about. And there was a bunch of stuff like that. But the one thing that I'll give it, even to start my deal with the sort of positive, he did try to take it into a bold place with it didn't follow the roadmap, obviously, of The Force Awakens, and he tried to stretch the boundaries of where Star Wars was going, which no other Disney movie has actually done. Now, for good or for ill, and there's a bunch of ill, I know, but I have conflicting opinions on this movie, and I actually like a lot of the philosophies that went down, including a lot of the stuff from Skywalker, which is, I know, the big hated thing.
Well, for me, I knew very little of the movie going in, except for I was excited to see it. I wanted to see what was going to carry on. I was excited to find out more about Rey. I was excited to find out more about Snoke, because really, it was just touched upon in Force Awakens, right? So I wanted to know more. And I know I went to the theater by myself because I couldn't get my daughter to go with me because she usually went with him to me before. Went in with, again, there's a lot of reviews out there saying it was a really good movie. probably one of the best Star Wars movies ever. And then I remember watching the movie and soaking it all in. And when the movie ended and the credits started rolling, I went, was that good? I didn't know. I really didn't know if that was a good movie. I watched a Star Wars movie, but I know I wasn't excited. There wasn't really any part of the movie I was excited about. And when it ended, I was just like, felt just nothing. And I just felt really disappointed. And I felt just like I couldn't even come to the grip. Was it a good movie? And I was leaning more to the side of not. That was my first reaction. Steve, what was your first reaction?
Mine was similar. I was confused. Was wondering what just happened, especially at the end, which I guess we'll get to. But
We'll get there.
it was mixed for me. It was waiting for how long was it between 7 and 8 before
It was like 2 years. It did it every 2 years.
Right. Okay.
Because they had made the anthology films in between.
Right. Well, it was a 2-year wait to see what was going to happen with Luke Skywalker, right? That was the big excitement for me. It was like, oh, what's going to happen? What are going to be the first words? You know, it's like we would speculate. I know I would talk with James or Jason or whatever, and I would wonder if the first words, if he was going to say Rey or something, right? Because the speculation was she was his daughter or whatever, right? And that
would have been good. That would have been good.
What we got was something way different. So I'll tell you what, my thought on it is that I saw it one time in theaters, and my second time watching it was a few hours ago, because these guys, these evil monsters, made me watch it, and
you have to drink your Star Wars milk, Steve.
Well, Steve was mad, apparently. James was there for your showing there, Steve, and he said you were mad.
Well, James may or may not be right in that, but let's just say confused. That'd be more polite for me to say. But yeah.
As I showed last week, I have a whole list of things I broke down the movie, and everything came up I wrote down. So I have lots of stuff to discuss about this movie, for sure.
Also, too, I just want when we were talking offline, and I think I mentioned about my daughter was like wondering why I'm even going to watch this again. She's like, just watch a highlight video. What are you doing? Like literally, when I said when I turned it on and she was in the room, in kind of the dining room with my wife, I was telling Todd before we went live. She was looking at me like, like I said I was getting rid of the family dog or something. Like, really, you're gonna watch this? You're gonna watch this? It was like the most horrible thing, like of disappointment, and it was like, come join me, and she's like, absolutely not. And Jen, who's not here tonight, she said I should get quotes from my daughters and my daughter, and I'll go through what she said about the movie, which is only a few points here, but anyways.
Well, good. I look forward to hearing those quotes.
Yeah. So, anyways, how do you want to start this? What do you?
Let's start with the opening scene. The one thing Jason hinted at was the fact that this movie, opposed to all other Star Wars movies in the franchise, has so many kind of joke comic relief that's very Earthisms, right? That's what you called it, Jason, like Earthisms.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the first call in, you have Poe and the X-wing fighter approaching this big, huge Battlestar destroyer, right? And he's like, I'm waiting for, it's this little thing, and it makes a little mum joke. It just seemed really. I remember watching the first time. I did laugh, but at the same time going, this didn't seem very appropriate for this type of movie. It just seemed it's supposed to be in a galaxy far, far away. Why are they making mum jokes? Or doing a Verizon commercial, sorry, I'm just waiting. I can't hear you. It's just like, just
right.
Out of misplaced.
And I think I said that out loud when I was watching the film in the theater when he said that, and I remember saying under my breath, but I think I said it louder than I should have. I said, "Did he just say a mom joke?" and then I'd even said the other thing was. When Poe goes through that whole ring-a-ding is, I can't hear you. I guess I'll wait for him. And then one of the guys on Hux's bridge comes up to Hux and says something like, "He's tooling with you, sir." I'm like, tooling? Seriously? That's like that's
Well,
like
you
Yeah,
don't want
that
to say
was-
trolling, but you know, it's
Right.
like it was so bad.
And there were others that were even smaller, whatever. Like even when Luke was like, when Ray said she's from Jakku, and he's like, yeah, that's pretty much from nowhere. And that's not even a big deal. But even that took me out a little bit. And that is definitely one of the things Johnson did that I was not crazy about. The movie is littered with those. And that definitely in a Star Wars movie, I want nothing of Earth. Like, you know, again, it's almost like the comic relief thing where you got to be like, there's a way it works in Star Wars and there's a way that it kind of doesn't. And of course, the original trilogy just gives you the map on how to be funny, basically, in Star Wars. And
Yeah.
when you tie it to like Earth, almost, I don't want to say slang, maybe that's too powerful a way to say it, but it almost is, like with the mother joke and all that. I'm like, nah, dude. And I'm like, yet another director that didn't quite get it with the humor part in a Star Wars movie. And that was one of the things I wasn't crazy about it.
I even feel like even you look at the fish people on Luke's island, right? Who are like the maids, and they were looked like they were dressed up like nuns. It just had a look too similar to being a maid outfit or a nun outfit. You know what I'm saying? Just like it was too many similarities to what it would be on Earth, and I even thought those characters were terrible. It just seemed so vague and just out of nowhere. They kind of just pop up one day when she blasts a hole in the wall, right? Just again,
Yeah.
Earthisms I just didn't care for at all.
Didn't bother me. They didn't really. I see what you're saying. They didn't really bother me too much. You said it was like they were the caretakers of like that place for all time, or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems to be there for the sake. To me, this movie has lots of things that are just there for the sake of being there, and that's what I feel strongly. Because what do they add to this? They don't add anything to the story. They're supposed to be comic relief, and everything they do is annoying and just kind of falls flat. Right? Like that's the only purpose they have in the movies, to be comic relief. Same as Porgs. Sorry, Porgs. I think are just a useless waste of time on the film. They add nothing to the story at all. Except for they're cute. It's like, that's what I thought of this movie. Like, you always hear George Lucas saying that, remember, Star Wars is for kids. This movie was dumbed down so much, and everything's for kids. Like, just everything. The little jokes. Kids will find those little jokes about, Sorry, my alarm's going off. I don't want to burn my house down. Sorry. I have food in the oven. Just give me 1 second, guys.
He's cooking porgs.
Porgs, yes.
I would love to cook some porgs. And they
He's got half a dozen.
Pork doesn't eat it. Come on, eat it.
that was hysterical. That I thought was funny, actually, with Chewie.
That made me cringe so hard in the theater.
No,
so hard in the theater.
That was poking fun at like the very thing. It's almost like he was poking fun at the very theory you're saying. Like Johnson agrees with you in a way. Like the Porgs were this silly character, and I agreed. But it was just funny when Chewie was going to eat one.
It was just a waste of time. It doesn't add anything to the story. I'm talking as a filmmaker sort of thing. Like, I'm not a kid anymore, and so it's just, to me, it's just such a huge distraction. Took away from the story. We were trying to build this relationship with Luke and Ray, and it was just like it just always interfered with a bit of comic relief that just really, I felt it just felt very, very flat.
No, it's true, because even the other characters that people moan about actually do have their place. Like the Ewoks were massively central to Return of the Jedi. They fought and they did their thing. And then even Jar Jar, as much as people bemoan Jar Jar, he was, well, I don't know. Jar Jar's, he had a role. Something you could debate somewhat with Jar Jar, but
he was there for a reason.
Right.
Therefore, there's a purpose for the characters. It's not there. It's there for the sake of doing stuff, right? That's my issue I have. Everything should have something that progresses the story along. Right. Next one thing I want to bring up, what I really didn't like was the simple fact that why Snoke wanted Kylo to get rid of the mask. Because you know what I'm saying? He didn't want the mask and told him to take it off. And I just didn't get that part, right? Because Vader was Vader. You know what I'm saying? That was they killed Anakin. It seemed like Snoke was trying to bring back Ben. I just didn't.
I think
No,
what
I
you know,
think.
I think
Go ahead,
I think he
Steve.
was demeaning him. I think it was
Yes.
to kind
Yeah.
of beat on him because he knew that the mask was a comfort zone for him, and he, with the mask off, he was just Ben, and he could, expose his face, right? Because he was cut up from the girl who's never fought with a lightsaber, beat him, and was taunting him about the scar and whatever else.
Right. He was literally stripping him down with that. Like having to bear himself, like he's literally hiding behind that mask. It's a little easier with the scar and all that. And then, because you're right, he made mention of that scar in the same scene, and I agree with that actually. That he was demeaning him. As James just said, he was judging his cosplay. He was cosplaying himself and not doing a good job.
But then after that, he got fixed up, sort of thing, fixed the scar, sort of thing. I don't know. It just you're building this character who wants to be Vader, right? And then all of a sudden, to me, it's a story arc. And then I know it's the next movie they bring it back again because I just don't understand the purpose of getting rid. I hear you saying sort of thing, but again, it's kind of ruined the whole entire character of what they established him to be in the first movie.
But if you think about it, though, he ends up, what he does to Snoke. I think the anger in him though says, "Oh, all right, you're gonna cut me down to size. You're gonna try to, make me feel exposed and all that." And then he kind of rises up by killing the guy. But
Can I? I've talked about this before. Before we get going, can I just read through my daughter's quotes?
Yeah. Oh, please do.
My daughter. Okay, now The Last Jedi ended Star Wars for my daughter, who was then 13 and has never watched no, she hasn't. She's not watched the Star Wars. She went to see The Rise of Skywalker once, and then that was it. But she actually fell asleep halfway through. But so here's her quotes. When I asked her, I'm like, "Do you have any quotes that I could read about what you think of The Last Jedi?" Number 1, Finn is handsome. So is Poe. Okay. Number 2, she says, "I love Rey. She's very swag." Okay, for all you hip kids. And then she said, "They ruined Luke. And finally, the movie is trash." So, anyways.
Those are good. Those are valid points.
A lot of people share that opinion.
Yes,
that's
that
actually
Rey is swag.
Well, I thought they did a really good job setting up Rey in The Force Awakens. Like, at first you don't know who's going to be the big heroes. Is it going to be Finn? Is it going to be Rey was there, right? But maybe looked like, as a Princess Leia. Then at the end, Mara showed that she's the one, right? And then this movie just I don't know, just seemed very. She's cool and stuff, but again, I don't know. There's so much stuff.
I think what took it away from me was the change in characteristics of each character, because Rian Johnson obviously didn't follow kind of what J.J. Abrams was doing and switch things up. So it was weird. It was like Episode 7, General Hux is this like very fascist, blah blah blah. Like, I don't want to say the word of those people we were fighting in World War II because I don't want this video to be flagged, but very that whole speech he was given before they they blasted the planets and stuff, very 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 tough. And then in this movie he turned into a Monty Python skit, like bumbling English man who was it was like it was sure. So why and maybe Rian Johnson didn't have thoughts on the character, but he went from that to bumbling, and that's all I could think of was Monty Python when they would do like a German soldier from World War II or something like that that kind of feel to him,
right? That's a fair point. Hux was annihilated, and throughout the entire movie really too.
Yes.
He was exactly what you're saying through the whole thing. It definitely took
and who else?
Sinisterness.
Finn goes from a hero to again, coward, goofy guy again in the second one. You know what I mean?
Well, I want to talk about that whole entire side mission they go on. Which I just find totally ridiculous because it really doesn't do anything in the storyline, right? They go down to try to find this code breaker. They go down. They do this whole entire freaking gambling planet, which is just totally ridiculous. You know, and then they escape. They find this code breaker. It's not the code breaker. They bring him up.
Right.
The whole entire thing, it goes nowhere. It goes absolutely nowhere. Nothing's learned. Nothing of that whole entire mission mattered.
Yeah, it's true.
Nothing. Like the whole at the end, like it was just seemed so pointless. And it just like it's like one thing they tell you about in film school and writing stuff is like you never have a movie and then all of a sudden they wake up from a dream. Like, so nothing happened. This is exactly what happened with the whole thing. You're following around and nothing happened. Nothing mattered except for it built a bit of a relationship between Finn and Rose, right? But
right.
And the shame of it is, and that to me, of the entire sequel trilogy, and just thinking about it, and we'll see. I'm sure we'll talk about exactly what you're talking about after we see Rise of Skywalker too. And the biggest thing they missed was Finn. The more I think about the sequel trilogy, the more I feel like Finn was the huge chance that they missed. Like Finn could have spent episode 8 coming into his own with his Force abilities. And I even thought and again, it wouldn't have totally worked out because Rey was already with Luke, but I'm like, I had this crazy idea, like, imagine Luke had run into Finn, and like, imagine Leia was training Rey, like, from the very beginning, and then Finn was actually ran into Luke Skywalker at some point, and Luke was like, wow, this guy. I feel like those two would have bonded because Finn was so alone, really, coming from the First Order. And episode 8 could have, in some shape or form, spent time developing Finn's own ability, which I thought was made very evident in The Force Awakens even. He was ripe. He was to become a Jedi or at least gain some knowledge of the Force or something, if not become a full-fledged Jedi. But absolutely, that was the biggest missed opportunity maybe for me of The Last Jedi and maybe the sequel trilogy in total was the development of Finn into something really extraordinary by the end of the trilogy.
Right. And the recent events tell us anything, so does John Boyega. I mean, he started voicing his opinions about what he thought about what his character became, which, very, very controversial. But
Jeremy said like Phantasma, they built the posters and all the stuff for Force Awakens came out, that they really built up this character as being something. Nothing really happened with that character in episode 7, and really nothing. She didn't show up until the last, the 5 minutes, and then she gets killed off like this so easily. She was a nothing character. It was a great constant character, didn't. Yeah, it's
right. Yeah, and actually, I think I said this when we did 7. I actually thought Finn was going to be the Jedi and Rey would be like the Han Solo, the ship person, and I kind of, it's because of those first trailers, right? It kind of gave us the different impression about what was actually going to be happening in the films. But I had to agree with you, Jason. Finn was a huge missed opportunity for character development because he went through the stormtrooper, he was running away and he was scared, and in the end he realized, oh, he's going to stay, he's going to fight. And he defends Rey. He gets taken down by Kylo Ren. And then he wakes up in episode 8, and it's like episode 7, first scene all over again. He's like trying to escape. I'm afraid. I don't want to be around here. I'm going to leave. And
he's pretty much a joke. He's pretty much a joke the whole entire episode, right?
And when we watched The Force Awakens again, it reminded me that, wow, he had a great start. Like a really good start. And James, made a comment like he's randomly just 2.5 movies later, they finally decide to do something. I honestly thought in The Force Awakens, I was like, this is part of the Force Awakening. This dude's perfect. Like, he's coming from the bad guys because he's he's actually the most morally sound of all the characters, like new and old. And I'm like, fine, even if Rey is the focus, I'm like, Finn's got to have a journey. I mean, I was convinced even at the end of Force Awakens, I was like, oh, cool. This dude's going to go on a Jedi journey too. And I didn't envision all this as just Rey, like after the Force Awakens. And especially the name Force Awakens, it gave me the sense that it's awakening all over the galaxy. So you're going to have Jedi popping up in amidst the bad guys and everywhere.
Right.
So I was really, and then, as pointed out, like Finn finally come, the movies finally acknowledge him as something Force sensitive way late. Like we're at the end of the trilogy, and now you're starting him to be Force sensitive, like acknowledging that. I'm like, I thought he was all along. Like it was a huge missed opportunity.
And one thing I want to bring up too, like a little transition thing here, the fact that this is a Star Wars movie, correct? Right? And what's one thing synonymous with the Star Wars movies is stormtroopers. The first stormtrooper sighting in this movie is at 1 hour and 29 minutes and 46 seconds.
that is so awesome. That never would have occurred to me. Wow.
It's like, oh crap, there's a stormtrooper in this movie. Holy crap. Like, really?
Man, every some of the root.
You look at every Star Wars movie. You look at the original trilogy. There's always Star Wars. There's always some form of stormtroopers early on in the movie. You look at the prequels. There's droids, right? And then you look at even the new ones. You have Force Awakens. The stormtroopers right off the bat, right? And then you look at the Rise of Skywalker, which is next week. But then there's stormtroopers off the bat. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the hell?
Right.
Like,
that's amazing. It's that I never
1 hour, 29 minutes and 46 seconds before the first stormtrooper makes an appearance. Like, what? I'm sorry. That's just one little complaint. Like, my name is Trooper Todd for a reason, because I wanted to watch Star Wars stormtroopers get blasted, and there was nothing.
That's right, Jeremy. That is an insane stat.
That is C-3PO like in its accuracy, and just that's fantastic.
Well, I was upset.
That changes my thinking on some of this, man. Wow, it never ever would have occurred to me, and that's right though. God, you don't really
see any exactly when you do. Like, you have Phantasm shows up, and then she dies instantly, and Snoke. Like, I thought they really did a really good job just hinting at Snoke being this big bad guy like Palpatine, right, sort of thing, and then just kill him off. Just kill him off. And, Ray, your parents are nobodies. What? I know it changes it, but like it was just everything they set up in Force Awakens. We were talking about last week how we were so excited about all these things that set up perfectly, right? Planted all these seeds, just washed over as nothing, had no impact at all on the story.
Yeah, that's
it's not going to wipe out so easily.
I just think what happened is when he came in, he was just kind of sweeping away things he didn't want to develop because he had his own ideas, which is unfortunate, right? It's the no plan for sequel thing. But sorry, Jason, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Snoke, I have mixed feelings on, man. Like, there's no, like, Todd, what you said. I mean, there's no, debating. Like, when I first saw it, I was like, yeah. Like, I was so stunned, surprised when Kylo took him out, and I'm like, I saw the good of it at first when it happened, because I was like, now Kylo Ren is going to step up and assume control of all this, which was a cool thing to me, which eventually was copped out, of course, because in The Rise of Skywalker we got Palpatine, which to me was sort of making up for the fact that they did what you said. We pulled the rug out under Snoke before we ever even got anything on him. And the whole thing was just when it first happened, I was so stunned by it and excited by the prospect of what happened to Kylo Ren's character. I was actually cool with it, but I can't deny, I know we never got anything. We never knew who Snoke was or anything. So
no, exactly. And the thing is, like again, I remember seeing that going, oh, that's something I didn't expect it. But at the same time, I had the same feeling when Darth Maul died in Episode 1, or when we thought he died in Episode 1, right? Like, because Darth Maul, I thought would be the big bad guy for all three movies, was killed off in the first movie. But this now, Snoke goes not at the conclusion of the movie, just right halfway through. And it was done so I do like how they did it, where he was hiding his emotions, like Snoke was reading Ben's emotions of he's going to strike down Rey, which he was just hiding it to strike down him. That was kind of cool how they did that, but you just got rid of this big character they set up to be this big, huge bad guy, and everybody was fearing him, and he's nothing.
Right.
It's again, when something points someplace and goes nowhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate too, that we just 2 movies, Force Awakens and Last Jedi, and completely wiped under the rug, which just shows the underlying problems of sequel trilogy is that they did not plan this stuff out. They did not plan the story.
For sure.
So James disagrees with me. James disagrees with me 100%. He says Snoke getting killed was awesome. He loved it. What does he say?
When it first happened, man, I thought the same thing. I cheered. I was like, yeah.
Well, I want Ben to stay evil. I have no problem with Ben staying evil. I didn't want him to be Ben. I wanted him to be more than Ben. I wanted him to kill Ben off and be this Kylo Ren guy. And I'm also disappointed that Knights of Ren didn't go anywhere either. Like the Knights of Ren didn't even exist.
Knights of Ren
was
weird.
Disappointing.
And then the next movie they just show up in landscape photos. You know what I mean? But we'll get to
exactly.
That next time. Can we talk about the chase? The chase in space.
You mean the slow walk? You mean the slow walk?
Yeah, it felt like, you remember Battlestar Galactica, the new series, where they're chasing the humans, like the Cylons are chasing them. That's what it felt like, right? Where they're jumping, and then they're just going really slow, right? They don't have enough fuel to jump anymore. But I thought it was always funny how easy it was for ships to just come and go off, like Rose and Finn's mission to the Vegas planet. I thought that was funny. I'm like, we're just gonna go do this side mission, and like no TIE fighter is gonna chase any ship coming off. You know what I mean?
And they
doing
didn't.
the same thing, and they didn't. And I just thought that was so funny. Or when they escaped, right? When they went into like their escape pods or whatever, that was the big plan. They were going to go to the salt planet. I thought that was really funny. And I wrote it down. I was like, this reminds me of Battlestar Galactica. You know, the big ship chase that goes really slow.
It was just a long, like Star Wars is known for epic space battles. I know we had an epic space battle early on, but it's really small. You know, the bombers, it was kind of underwhelming, sort of thing. You know, we can discuss technology and gravity and space and how the bombs fell down. I don't know how they're magnetized. I don't know, but other than that, there was no epic ship battle after that. There was nothing.
No, yeah,
it's the only Star Wars
trilogy kind of disappointed me in that. Like the Force Awakens had approached some cool, like the Star Killer base attack. We got some decent starship stuff. But this whole trilogy, I'm like, this didn't touch the original trilogy. The trench run, Return of the Jedi battle, it didn't even, none of it touched it. And we'll get to, I'm looking forward to, next week is the one I'm looking forward to, because I've got some beefs with Rise of Skywalker in some regard.
There's lots of beefs. I have that with that one too. Don't worry. Line up. There's lots of stuff in this movie, that movie too. What's another thing that really bothered me in this movie? So
Rey in the cave.
Well, I want to discuss these things. I discussed this before. As you can see, I've decorated my camera with these dice, these random dice that appear in this movie, and you had they had no certificates at all, and you have Luke grabbing them and this close-up shot, and just like, what the hell are dice? You know, like
those dice are awesome, Todd. You have canon.
This is a great
your camera. It's awesome.
A great gift from Wookie Steve. Thank you very much, Steve, for this gift of these dice that was so insignificant in the movie, but it played a pivotal role that's supposed to invoke some emotion that nobody knows what the hell they are.
They're sabacc dice, dude.
I'm telling you guys. Somebody out there. Remember when we were younger, the hands dice, man. It was sort of a thing, man. I'm telling
Never.
Remember,
Never.
Todd,
Something in a role.
That's all we talked about, Todd.
No, Steve, shut up. We never talked about it once. We never talked about it once. There's one shot on New Hope where it hits Chewbacca's head when he walks in the cockpit. You never see the dice ever again. All of a sudden.
You remember your Millennium Falcon that we played with back in the day? The dice were right there in the cockpit. Didn't you remember? We would always go, the dice. Come on. It's true. The dice look really cool though on camera.
They do look cool on camera.
Well,
On your
they're serving more purpose right here than they did in the whole entire movie of freaking Last Jedi. That's when you watch the Solo movie. There's like tons of the shots of the dice. It played pivotal role because it had to make sense. Had to link to the stupid Last Jedi movie so people understand why the dice were important.
The dice are everything, dude.
I'm telling you, the dice had some significance to people going way back. That's why they put them in those movies. That's why I put them in Solo.
They put it in Solo because in Last Jedi, and nobody knew what they were. That's why. Because Solo came after Last
I had
Jedi.
a tear in my eye. Last
Come
Jedi. I was
on.
like, the dice.
Come on. I'm sitting there going, I'm just cringing. My teeth are cracking, kind of like, what the hell are the dice for?
I was like, oh my God, Hen's dice. I was emotional. I saw it was like Hen's dice. Oh man.
It was.
It
I know that's all I could
signified
think about.
everything.
The movie ended for me right there. It was so good. I think we broke. We broke Todd.
I know, James. I know the dice were there. I saw them in that New Hope. It hit Chewbacca's head. I saw those when I watched New Hope again on Disney Plus in all HD glory. But again, one shot when Chewbacca's getting to the cockpit for the first time doesn't have an emotional attachment to the audience. That's what I'm trying to say.
In the role-playing game, the original role-playing games, one of those books, there was like a maneuver. They made a thing of the dice even back then. There was a maneuver. I think it was a maneuver in the ship. No, but the role-playing game.
We're talking about movies, not role-playing games. It didn't come with the action figures. Didn't come with the dice. There's no significance to it.
My point is, like in the movies themselves. Yeah, they're never mentioned, nothing. But outside of the movies, they were like a known thing, like Hen's dice. A little bit.
Easter eggs. Okay, I'll give you Easter eggs are really important to have in movies. They're fun, but they're not usually pivotal points of movies. Trying to evoke a big, huge emotional response. This dice was trying to give off a huge emotional response. Nobody, except for a select few percentage, people know what the dice were.
But
what if Leia went to go play Sabacc and she didn't have dice? It would have been devastating. So when Luke returned them at the end, Luke returned them. Anyways, hey,
I'm not dissing role-playing games. James thinks I'm dissing role-playing games. I'm not. I'm just saying not everybody has an attachment to the dice from a role-playing game in the film.
No, my point though is that the role-playing game, they put it in the role-playing game all the way back then because there was like a little thing about them.
Fantastic.
It's great. Awesome. But speaking of Luke Skywalker, can we talk about the ginormous elephant in the room, which was Luke Skywalker in the literal in this film?
See, Jeremy agrees there.
Oh, we got someone else here.
We got fans of the dice. There you go.
That's my wife. She must hear me screaming about the dice because I talk about the dice all the time. When I watched the movie the other day, like I watched Last Jedi 4 times. I think I got stupider every time I watched the movie.
Todd, we just won the internet. Oh man, that is so good. I wish we could end the podcast right now because your wife chimed in about the dice. Which
when you got this gift for me, Steve, these lovely dice for me, it was like an hour conversation afterwards because I was like, oh my goodness me. I thought I was laughing so hard. It's the thing I hate the most about the Star Wars franchise is these dice.
You've got them perfect too in your frame. It looks good.
If Todd's wife is still listening for some reason to this podcast, Todd's next birthday cake has to be in the shape of those dice. It has to look like the dice. That would be a perfect birthday. When's your birthday coming up, by the way?
I got a long time to go still.
Delivery service. Oh, okay. Well,
I got a long time to go still.
Oh,
it'll be in the new. It has to be in the new year. It won't be until 2022 now. I don't want to say my birthday over the air. That's all, because.
Aw. Well, then we'll be able to sing.
My wife has no problem giving up my information.
Look at that.
She's going to make me a cake with dice now. Perfect.
That is fantastic. I cannot wait till next year.
Why don't you make it my Father's Day gift?
Wait, jot this down.
Yeah, write
Father's
it down.
Day cake.
Oh, there you go.
Because Father's Day is the most important parent holiday of the year. We know that. So,
Absolutely.
but
More
moving,
about Luke. More about Luke. You're talking about Luke sort of thing, right? I'm sorry about the dice. I ran on the dice, wasting too much time. But Luke, snap, yes, snap. So Luke, you weren't happy with. You were a Luke fan, Steve.
okay. So for me and maybe others, including my daughter or people that weren't happy with what they felt were maybe negative treatment of the character of Luke Skywalker, to Star Wars, Luke Skywalker is Star Wars. Star Wars is Luke Skywalker, right? It's the story, regardless. Now, I knew going into the sequels that it was apparent during 7, we realized, okay, there wasn't going to be a lot of focus on the old trilogy characters. I can accept that, right? They're trying to hand off the torch to the new young people to take Star Wars into the next 30, 40 years. But I mean, there's a way to kind of hand off gracefully to bring in those new fans and take along the old fans to the with them to the new Star Wars. And then there was a way of kicking the hell out of the old characters to make way for the new characters. And I just felt that there was kind of a negative a negative approach to doing this. I mean, an example is, how many times did Kylo Ren say in the film, let the past die, kill it if you have to? And it would have made more sense if Adam Driver would have turned and broke the fourth wall and looked right at the camera, because that was definitely a message to the fans, that get over it. We're just going to do all this kind of stuff to the old people because they're it's just for like old fogies, right? We're going to be moving on with this new Star Wars. And that's what it kind of felt like. And I understand they were giving Luke some kind of depth, right? He had this big crisis or where he felt he was a failure because of Ben, et cetera, the Jedi Academy that he started. But I think it went a little far. I mean, with things like, and again, I've been sharing pictures like this with the guys in our private chat, but just like this scene and this scene, you know what I mean? My wife walked in when I was watching this and she's like, what the hell's going on? And stuff. And then I have to show my reaction to this. I'm sorry. I do not care. This is only my second time watching the film, and that was, I just it just felt like an insult, right? And it's not my movie, and it's not, you know what I mean? I'm not claiming that they owe anything to the fans or to the old fans. But when you take a character, such as Luke Skywalker, that was the focus of the original trilogy that so many people love, even to this day, and kind of crap all over him and give him a somewhat semi kind of sort of redemption at the end as some kind of force ghost, but or whatever he did, some hologram that showed
Astral
up to fight
projection.
the First Order, and that's your answer. It felt like there was disdain for old Star Wars to make room for new Star Wars, and there was room for both, and we all knew the old Star Wars wasn't going to be going into the future with them. All us old guys understood that. But then when you take it and you just crap all over it, I don't know. And it's not avant-garde, or it's not deep, or it's not any of this kind of stuff to me. To me, it seemed very lazy and kind of like, not thought out at all, because there was no care at all, because the goal was to make their own movie and forget about anything else in the past 40 years that led up to it. But anyways,
that's that's very well said, and I'm glad, Steve, you got that out, man, for sure. And I Man, I have such conflicting thoughts with the whole Luke thing. On the one hand, I agree with most of what you say, actually, and understand it. I understand because the fans, we wanted to see Luke Skywalker. People needed that, and I get the emotional part of that too. We needed to see Luke, especially the way the world's been lately. And then there's like the part of me that actually I liked a lot of what I saw about Luke in my own little universe, while understanding that it was disappointing because people saw him grumpy throughout the entire movie. And like you said, like the redemption and that he had to. I liked what he was telling Rey though, with like the philosophy of like the Force doesn't belong to the Jedi and all that kind of stuff, which to me was like a deeper understanding with him over what the Force is, and that the Jedi were just kind of zealots in a way that just kind of kept it as if it was theirs, but it's not. It's a living breathing. It literally is what Yoda was saying, a living breathing thing. I liked all that stuff. I understood as somebody who when I saw Return of the Jedi, even as a kid back when we saw it in '83, I remember even then thinking, man, he is a loner. He's all in black. He's already kind of cast aside. I wasn't surprised by him ending up alone after a life of tragedy and then almost having another life of tragedy going through with Ben. So I actually connected. I think ultimately, and I could go on and ramble on for hours of it, I think there could have been a sort of compromise, which you didn't, not exactly what you said, but I think The Last Jedi could have presented Luke as he was, a dude who's just, I've had enough of all of this. I'm broken, I'm beaten. And then at some point could have turned him around a little more towards, I think, what people envisioned him for. And I think the opportunity, there was a scene when Rey confronted him in the rain and all that. And
Right.
Luke's like, look, don't, with Kylo, it's not going to go the way you think. And he says, don't do it and all that stuff. When, of course, Rey's going to do it. Somebody has to. They got to fight off Kylo
He did?
Ren. Right. And she hands him, as if to hand him back his saber for what was, to me, okay, here's the second chance. When I was watching the movie, I thought, this is where he's going to start turning back to Luke. And that was my impression when I saw the movie. She hands him the saber, and Luke was still like, no, he didn't accept the saber. And that's when, to me, in my sense, watching the movie a few times, I'm like, that's where I feel like he could have started to kind of turn back. Because eventually what it comes to, it's not just his tragedy and everything that he went through, which, again, I understand why, and I appreciate that he ended up how he did. But eventually Luke, with Rey right in his face, had to come to the understanding, this isn't about me and my tragedy, though. This is about this girl. This is about Leia, my sister. This is about a resistance and people who are fighting evil. And in that regard, he should have come back. I didn't feel as strongly about that. I was actually okay with Luke, like the first couple times I saw Last Jedi, all the way through. But the more I watched the movie, the more I realized, man, they really do have him stubbornly pushing against the light. And I'm like, I appreciate his point about the Jedi aren't necessarily the overall keepers of the Force, okay. But beyond that, you have good people dying in the galaxy right now, and you might have the power to make that stop, including people who you care about and love. And for that reason, he should have ended up, helping out Rey and Leia. And it was almost, it was a little too late at the end. That was a cool scene, but I can understand why almost too little, too late.
I just read right here. Jason had one part about the bitter hermit. He said he can accept, but trying to assassinate his own nephew, he can't accept. Like, see, that's my thing. I did not. The whole entire scenario, I could not buy into. I could not believe it, because you think he converted Darth Vader,
Right.
Right? He believed that his father,
Always.
And how could he just lose faith so easily on Ben, who wasn't as powerful as Vader was? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It just, to me, it just makes no sense. It goes against the whole entire character of who Luke was. So I just didn't buy the whole entire story about. I know they had to come to some kind of resolution why Ben went bad. I think this is really, really weak thing they did to try to make that connection. I just don't believe Luke would have turned against his nephew, trying to assassinate his nephew because he redeemed his father. It just makes no sense to me at all. And then
here's
it started off.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, it started off. They kind of set the tone when we first when they go back to Rey handing him the lightsaber, and Luke takes the lightsaber and then does that comical thing over the shoulder. And actually, James and I were talking about this yesterday, with different ideas. And you know what could have been really nice that could have saved if they would have kept this tone with how Luke was. Sure, he was on this island. Sure, he felt like a failure and was hiding from everything. But he could have actually, instead of throwing it or even dropping it, he could have walked up to her, handed it to her on the way by and said, "Not anymore," and just walked by. And then instead of ignoring her like a crazy old man when she was trying to knock on the door, and then even when Chewbacca enters the scene, he doesn't seem like close, like, oh, like catching up with Chewbacca. He's avoiding everyone. Chewbacca is relegated to just hanging out at the ship, apparently.
Chewbacca does nothing. What a waste of time. What a waste of time.
Nothing. They were friends. They were long-time friends, right? He was upset about Han. Didn't want to talk about what have you guys been doing for the past, 20 plus years. And it was none of that. It was just like, we're going to show Luke and all these really weird, do I have to show you guys again? Like this was comic relief. Like, how great was that? James actually told me I should try to find a prop and make that and start the podcast off drinking that, having it going down my beard, like, a gross old guy. And I couldn't find dye.
It's probably the only awkward scene for me in all of Star Wars. Like that scene, you're like,
it is very awkward. It just seems weird. Well,
I want to
go ahead, Jason. I have a point. No, you go ahead, Jason. I wanted to finish off my Luke storyline, but I want to wait till afterwards. So you go ahead, Jason.
Well,
go ahead.
I'll let you, because you'll be able to respond. Because I wanted to make this one thing, and I'm not, you guys, and everybody's bringing up such good points, and that's why this is such an interesting discussion. The one thing I want to say, and Jerry makes a point too, the discrepancy, and just what you talked about, Todd, was well said. There's one thing though about that a lot of people, as far as the Luke assassinating Kylo, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people. I'm usually on the bad end of it, trying to defend, and I'm not trying to defend all of this. When there were 2 points of view given about Luke and going to execute Kylo Ren. There was Kylo Ren's point of view, right? When Luke was all and he looks all over the top, insane. He swings his saber at Kylo, and it's just a big mess. That's how Kylo explained it. When Luke went in there, Luke explained to Rey, and they show, he says, I looked into this kid's head. I saw hatred and anger. I saw people dying and screaming, and he saw Darth Vader, the destruction of Darth Vader, like people dying all over again. And he said, for a fleeting moment or a fleeting shadow, I think was the term, he did consider taking him out because he wanted to spare the galaxy destruction, but he never actually acted on it. He thought of it. He had his saber in hand, which I'm not saying that's already too far as a master. That's fine. I can't dispute that. But he didn't actually swing his saber to execute him. He thought about it. He had it in mind. What do I do? The galaxy's going to go through absolute devastation. I can't let that happen. He considered killing Kylo, but he never actually attempted it. Kylo Ren's version of the story to Rey of what Luke did was that he swung down to kill him. But that wasn't actually the truth.
And you bring up a really good point, and that's a really good point, because sometimes you overlook it for all the disappointment. But the thing is, how come he didn't see it's him that caused Ben to go bad? Because it's that action that made Ben turn or to leave, right? It was Luke's fault, right? So how come he saw all this other stuff, but he couldn't see the fact that it's him that did it? Come on.
Wait, no. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying, because I'm saying that he
looked into his eyes.
He saw that Ben, before he attempted, was going to kill him, whatever.
Yes,
he had determined, through his force sensitivity, whatever.
Yeah.
That Ben Solo was was the next Darth Vader. He said that Snoke had already gotten to his heart. He said that Snoke had already corrupted his heart. He said that. And then he said that but he determined that Ben Solo was already gone. Like it was already too far before Luke could do anything about it. And he did, for a fleeting moment, consider taking him out.
Right.
Yeah,
That's how I saw it. Anyway.
You bring up a really valid point where I'm hearing it, and it makes total sense. I just, again, it's Luke racing his saber to Ben that really pushed him over, right? Luke, the action of
well, he was
right,
he was holding it, and he was standing over him. So
Yes.
of course Kylo is going to be like, dude.
Exactly. Yes. So Luke saw everything else, but didn't see the fact that it was that action that caused him to change.
Okay. All right. I see what you're saying.
Like, how come he can predict all that other stuff or see the other stuff, but can't see what caused it?
I think
that's my issue.
That's a great point. I think it was characterized as he thought it was already too late. He said Snoke corrupted his heart, and he saw horror for the galaxy. And I think he went into his room, whatever his hut, that night, thinking it's too late already. This kid's already going. This kid's already going. He's already going to be evil.
He converted Vader. Vader killed kids.
But this was his one. This was his one failure. You know, thinking about that to Jason's point. I mean, maybe that's because you know, like Ben and Yoda, they kind of had their failure too, right? So
that's true.
And so they acted in a way, and I think we've said this in other podcasts, where their whole goal, Ben Kenobi and Yoda, was for Luke to train Luke to do one thing, to kill Vader, right? That was their whole thing. And when Luke's like, nah, he's my dad, I feel good in him, blah, blah, blah. They were like disappointed. It was like, that's not the plan, right? You have to finish what we couldn't. What it really came down to that, right? And so, and I think Luke's kind of maybe minor failure, you know, his lapse, you know, that one failure that he regrets, right? He should have did it differently, or had more faith in Ben, or did something different with Ben. And, you know, maybe that's what's going on. And I made notes about that. I'm like, you know, about Luke, how he was acting on the island with Rey and everything else. And I just say, you know, Ben Kenobi was bitter and beaten down in episode 2 and in episode 4 as well. And yet he wasn't a dick. He helped. He was like, help Leia. He answered the call of Leia, and he helped Luke, and blah, blah,
and
blah.
Yoda helped train Luke, even though he didn't want to, right? So, you know, they did their part they thought was right, where Luke didn't. But Jason, I thank you for you bring up a really good point. So I'm looking at that scene so much differently now. I still don't like it, but I hear exactly what you're saying, how you're breaking it down, and yeah, that makes total sense. And I now understand that whole entire scene a little bit better from that point of view. So thank you for shedding that light.
No, absolutely. And you know, and that's just my take too. I don't know, you know.
No, it makes good sense.
But I love what Steve just said too.
Absolutely.
You know, what both you guys just said, you know, about the arcs. I hadn't thought of that about Obi-Wan and Yoda, you know, how they're older and they had been through the grind as well. But that I can't dispute, Steve. And I didn't see, when I first saw The Last Jedi, I didn't get it quite as much that Luke was just kind of being a schmuck, where, you know, obviously he was the grumpy hermit.
I think Steve said dick.
Dick, yes. And I'm sorry, yes. But some of that I do agree with now. Like, it was over the top though with him. It was over the top. It's like Luke was never. He may have been failed at many things, but he was always a good guy, you know. And you know, that's a good point.
Here's James's comment. Ben was a hermit. Yoda was a bit of a troll, but neither of them was a dick. Yoda was trolling him to test and teach him. Luke was just mean. Yeah, I mean, that's how he was written. And that didn't seem like, you know, it just felt to me that Luke could feel like he failed and wanted to just hide. But when he had no empathy to the island, he could have been like, still like, yeah, that's not me anymore.
I'm sorry.
Take this and go. I can't do this.
His sister wanted Leia, like, go send Raid, go bring back my brother, right? And he didn't care. You know, it just seems so off for him. And for me, the big tragic thing, you know, you look at Force Awakens, you have Han Solo going down. Like, you know, you knew when they're making this sequel that the old characters would probably die off. Like, that was expected, right? Yep. You look at Han, how Han went, right? so impactful for the audience, right? It had meaning, it had purpose, it had emotional. Like we were talking about last week or 2 weeks ago, how much of an impact that scene with Han dying had on us, right? It was so good. This Luke just fades off, and it was so underwhelming for this guy who took down the Death Star, redeemed Darth Vader, just kind of. Like the whole entire scene on the Salt Planet, we haven't got into the Salt Planet, but where he's there, but he doesn't really do anything. They shoot blasters at him. Kylo takes one swing at him, he ducks it, he does nothing, and then just disappears. Right?
Just kind of talks to him. Right.
Everything was so underwhelming for this Jedi Master who we all followed. Every fandom person followed, and he just kind of. It was very underwhelming. Star Trek.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up Star Trek Generations when they had Captain Kirk with Picard, and how did Kirk die? He fell off a bridge.
Yeah,
Just so underwhelming.
I was like, really? That's how Kirk dies? Yeah.
Right. So same thing. Just kind of look, just like, well, I'm tired now, and I'm going to fade into a ghost. I just seems so underwhelming for this amazing character. We have Han go out in a big, huge ball of flames, and you have this just kind of undone.
I was disappointed that. And this was more so even we love Luke so much, and I was hoping they wouldn't kill him off. And I mean, we ended up losing in succession Han, Luke, Leia, all 3 movies, and that by the end of the sequel trilogy, I'm like, did we really have to kill everybody off in all 3 movies? Couldn't have some of them just ridden out into the sunset quietly?
On the Millennium Falcon, all really of them on the bridge at the same time.
We have to kill everybody. Like
for me, the story arc when to me Ben should have pressed the trigger and he should have blown up his mom. Like that would have been a huge story arc. About killing the past, right? Like that's one thing I really thought was going to happen in the movie, and I was a little disappointed it didn't. And then of course the whole Mary Poppins scene. Probably the most ridiculous scene in all Star Wars franchise, worse than any Jar Jar Binks thing, the whole Mary Poppins thing. Yeah. I really think Leia, that would have been a really big impactful story arc where Leia goes in a big huge ball of flame, and just again it has impact, and it could have really arced the story with Ben moving on, killing his mom, his father, then his mother. I think that would have been really good. And then
it would have been a good opportunity because in real life, Carrie Fisher had passed, and that they could rewrite and keep Luke in for 9 just to push it forward, right?
It would have made more sense. It would have made a lot more sense.
They really didn't want Luke Skywalker, they really, really didn't want Luke there.
If one character's going to survive to the next movie, it should have been Luke. He was the biggest character from the original trilogy. It just makes more sense as a story development.
Yeah, It would have been, and I think I wrote that down as a missed opportunity. It sounds mean, but it was like, we have this time that we could not have Luke die in this. Even if they didn't have time, and then that scene where he just fades away, they could have just said, well, no, he didn't die. Of course he didn't. You know what I mean? Like in episode 9, he came back and been the savior. Speaking of that scene where Luke shows up, I remember seeing that in the theater, thinking to myself, when Luke walks in, no one knows that he's a projection of some sort. I thought, wow. So before he left the island, he took time to cut and dye his hair before he flew in. And as it turned out, I was kind of relieved. I'm like, oh, I'm glad he wasn't so superficial that he did that. But, and I made a note too, when you first see Luke on the island and Rey's sitting there, she retrieves the lightsaber after he chucks it. She's looking in the water, seeing the X-Wing under the water broke my heart.
Yeah, I agree. That was cool. I like that part.
It was cool.
It was a beautiful scene. It was somber seeing the X-Wing underwater like that, but it was, they got it back at least though.
Yeah. So I want to bring one more point. Can I bring one more really quick point?
Yeah.
Onto the storyline, which I have is storylines going someplace that have no significance and no meaning. So the whole salty planet, you send the speeders out to stop this big, huge drill going to break down the door. So they all rush out there. They're sacrificing themselves trying to save the greater good. Now you have Finn. Here's an opportunity to stop the drill from blasting the doors to keep the people safe behind the doors. But instead, Rose stops Finn from crashing into it, sacrificing himself, doing the big hero play to save everybody else inside. She takes him out, and so everything's for nothing. So everybody who died in that battle died for nothing. right?
Yeah, that was pretty. Those things were completely futile too against, and everybody went out there. I was wondering, what are you guys going to do in these things against this gigantic friggin'? I didn't know what they were going to do.
Well, they were going to crash. Well, they were going to try to take it out, and obviously, the only thing they could do is crash into it, blow it up, keep the walls up. They'll be protected. But no, like love was more important than saving everybody. It seemed like it just. That's the line she said. What she said? She said something about. I wrote it down. She said something about fighting hate. She said fighting hate, but you have to do something for love, and it was just so. Let me find it here. I wrote it down.
Mooch.
Saving what? So saving what we love. Rose. She said something about something about stopping what we hate, but saving what we love.
Yeah.
It just. But again, so your love for Finn was more important than all the Rebel Alliance or
all the people.
All the people. That was much more important than that. Yeah. It just makes no. Everybody died trying to save everybody else for nothing, so she can get some action. Like, it made no sense.
Here, Todd, I'll help you out. I'll give another one of these for them. Yeah.
Thank you. So sorry, do you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, Jason? Like that just the whole thing was for nothing. The whole
100%. And the movie actually, and you can go back to even Canto Bight and all that, was really an opportunity more so than the actual story arc of the movie. It was a chance to show, look, the rich people who are funding the war are bad people. And because Rose was like looking out at the at the races and all that. And it was like that whole entire scene in the movie was used as like a moral lesson, more so than it had anything to do directly with the plot of the movie. And The Last Jedi, that's definitely a failing of The Last Jedi. The movie is littered with that stuff. Or he wanted to make that emotional scene, and like what, in one context, what Rose says is nice, like, oh, we're going to fight for what we love. But in the middle of the battle, like you're saying, it makes, well, you're saying to save what we love, you actually just ended up hosing, who we love. So, no, 100%. And The Last Jedi, he tried to make these nice lessons, these life and moral lessons, and he compromised the movie to do it, and exactly what you're saying. So I agree 100% with that.
And why wouldn't one of the walkers blast them on the ground? You know what I'm saying? Or step on them?
I was thinking that too. I'm like, wow, the whole First Order army is walking right by while they're just, we're helpless on the ground.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things where I think it was dumbed down for kids. You know what I'm saying? It just a lot of things are just done like BB-8 full of coins and shooting out the coins later on, like in the movie. Like it's physically impossible for one. It was stupid. Right. Even him, BB-8 driving the AT-AT, the little mini ST walker. Like, why wouldn't they have droids pilot all the X-Wings and stuff if he can do that? It just makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right. And the scene here, I just want to bring that up, going back to that scene.
It looks cool.
Where projection Luke goes out, and it was really cool because I had no idea what was going on, and they kind of blast the area, and he steps out, and he does that kind of, thing. And I'm watching it again today, and, I guess it was Rian Johnson's like, oh, this is going to excite everyone. Luke goes out and does this, and it turns out he's a projection. But I'm looking at that, and I think this is nothing, not even remotely close in comparison to the season finale of season 2 of The Mandalorian with Luke showing up. The TV show completely in those 3-4 minutes, whatever it was, 7 or 8 minutes, I think it was, of the fake Luke Skywalker, fake real Luke Skywalker coming in, and they captured it. Favreau and Filoni captured what I think Johnson was trying to sort of do here, but it just wasn't the same because it didn't feel the same because it wasn't genuine.
It started the same for me. When he walked out, I was excited. I remember in the theater going, okay, here we go. Finally. And then when he was blasting the ground, I was like, oh, and he walked, I didn't mind that. I was like, okay, here we go. And then the whole swing, and he ducks it, and then bye-bye, and he's gone. It was like, oh, so underwhelming. The build-up, wasn't there.
I liked the scene, but at the same time, I felt like too, we're all sitting there. You don't want Star Wars holding back at this point, like at this point in history, so many years. Like you wanted more. You just wanted to see him. Like the Mandalorian finale gave you him. Just you wanted to see that. I definitely agree. I did like the scene. I thought the whole thing was cool. It may have been a little too late, as Steve kind of said. And I definitely wanted, more just Luke's badassness. But at the same time, it does. You want to see him just cut loose, man. Like, come on. Like, and it was a little bit reserved.
Actually, Jeremy made a little thing. He actually didn't say lightsaber. He said laser sword.
Laser
for some
sword.
reason. I don't know why.
That's right.
Take my lightsaber. He actually said laser sword for some strange reason. I don't know why he said laser sword.
Because that's what we say in our world, right? People like that don't know Star Wars say, yeah, like with his laser sword. Although Anakin said that in episode 1, didn't he? It's like, how do you know I'm a, when he spots Qui-Gon's lightsaber, he's like, are you Jedi? And he goes, oh, why do you say that? He says,
Anakin.
Of your, Anakin says, because of your laser sword. So yeah,
who's a
kid who doesn't know anything, has never seen a Jedi before. So I can see him call a laser sword, opposed to a Jedi talking to another potential Jedi.
I had no problem with that, though. I mean, we have cars, automobiles,
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't
Can we talk about a little thing? The other thing too, kind of in the film that kind of arced throughout was this kind of thing between Kylo Ren and Rey, where they would all of a sudden show up together and talk, and sometimes be in their world somehow, because the Force apparently can do some pretty amazing things. And this meme, this joke here of Ben Swallow. This thing here, it's so funny. There's so many memes. I didn't find any though, but that whole scene was so awkward to me.
There was my don't hate thing right here. Don't hate them communicating back and forth. I didn't hate it.
I actually liked it a lot. I didn't like. I don't know. It was another squandered thing, I think, in the sequel trilogy, but.
It was the best thing. I thought again, the best thing of the whole entire movie, Adam Driver.
Oh, Driver, sure.
I have Adam Driver. I love that part. I liked the Ben. I like the Ben and Leia connection when they're and just Adam Driver is awesome. That's why I have that down.
I just think that the time where she kind of they're doing that little virtual thing with each other, but she's in Kylo's place, and then when he grabs her and takes her necklace or something, you know what I mean? Like
that was
is she actually in there? Was that Skywalker? Sorry, what am I thinking?
They touch. In this movie they come. They do touch.
He had water.
Yeah, water. That's what he had.
Right.
It was raining and on.
It was raining.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and then so that's what I really like that physical. I like the fact that they couldn't see where each other were, but they could see each other. I really like, and I like those scenes. That's where again, Adam Driver I thought was really, really good. No shirt. I didn't find it too awkward. I found the other scene more awkward.
Really?
We talked about earlier. Yeah, I had no problem with that sort of thing.
I don't know, man. Those pants are too high.
Well, they're very, very high pants.
That's what ruins the.
Makes them look all weird because they're so high. But anyways,
that's just how my grandpa would.
So, there was
We didn't talk about Rey in the cave.
Oh, the cave, yeah.
That was kind of a bunch of nonsense, really.
I don't know. It's on my list. It's on my list. I basically said, "What's with the many Reys?" It just made no sense to me. There's also one part too where it was Luke. He was in there, and there's a little emblem, and it had water, and it started shaking one time, and all the water was kind of bouncing around. But it only happened in one scene, and it just didn't go anywhere, and it made no sense to me. You guys probably didn't. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was like a very scenic sort of cave up on the rise, and when he was talking with Rey, that's right, and they showed a little.
It started shimmering. The water started bouncing around, and this little thing. did it once. I didn't know what kind of significance it had.
And
But yeah,
I didn't catch the significance of that either. Yeah, I don't.
So what's everybody taking the many rays? What was that? What were they trying to say? Because she wanted to see her parents. What was it trying to say?
There was talk that she was a clone. She'd been a clone engineered by the First
Right.
Order or something, or in the Rise of Skywalker. By then, when we knew the Emperor was in play, people thought, oh, maybe Palpatine, put in for a whole bunch of clones of these dark Jedis and raised one of them. Or there was all kinds of stuff about that, and there was a lot in that scene. And again, and that's what we talk about, man. The failing of the whole sequel trilogy is don't give us a whole bunch of stuff and then do nothing with it. Like, don't go anywhere with it. Like, Star Wars is ultimately ends up being pretty simple and straightforward. And then with her parents, that whole thing visually, and at first I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. What's going on? This is her equivalent of Luke in the cave on Dagobah. All right, okay.
Right.
And you see all the versions of her, and she's snapping her fingers and all that. And then her parents, and then it's just her. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't know. The sequel trilogy pisses me off with all that. Like, give us a bunch of stuff that means nothing really. And J.J. Abrams did it too, but I don't know.
I think that's a whole discussion for next episode regarding Rise of Skywalker and what J.J. Abrams had to try to clean up, right?
Right.
But just a lot of it made that whole entire scene made no sense to me. I like the concept of it. There's like the tree in Empire Strikes Back. I like that sort of thing. It just when Luke cut off Vader's head under the tree, you saw Luke's face. It's destined. You're going to turn the dark side, right? A possibility, right? This was just
it was just kind of nonsense.
The clone idea is a neat little idea. Like maybe she's but it doesn't go anywhere, right? It's just.
Yeah. And I think by that time too, because they made such a big deal, and we said earlier, and I think James even commented, like, okay, fine, if Rey's parents aren't going to be anybody important or whatever, if that's a thing, that's fine. This trilogy took a sledgehammer and just Rey's parents.
Yeah.
And even by the time that scene happened, it was like, okay, we're gonna get something here, because we didn't get with Luke and with the lightsaber and all that from Maz Kanata and that whole story. It was obvious we're not going to get anything from that in this movie. So with Rey's parents, I really was thinking, oh, okay, we may be headed towards something here. And then it's just her looking back at herself and then nothing. And I'm like, come on. Like you said, like Luke, at least, so simple, but you got so much when he cut off Vader's head and it turned into him. It was so beautifully done. It's like, okay, Luke, if you keep going down the path you're going, you could turn into Vader, which was amplified by him eventually losing his hand, which is almost the beginning of him, starting to go down that path potentially. Mm-hmm. But it was like you brought the dark side with you into this cave. You brought your weapons with you, and there was so much you could infer simply from that little scene. And the Rey scene, all this stuff, and I'm like, no, I got, there's smarter people out there than me, but I'm like, I got nothing from this.
Is her Jedi trials past them, and you are a Jedi?
Yeah.
So, okay, what was the test?
What did she do?
Yeah, it didn't. And that kind of brings me to this scene with Yoda and Luke, right? When he's on the island and Luke gives him the the get over it speech, and while they're watching the Jedi books burn, and Yoda says something that made me like, what did he say? Basically, they're burning, and Luke's like, "Oh, the books are in there," and
you haven't read them.
And yeah, he hasn't read them. But then he says something about Rey. He's like,
Rey got the books.
All that's in the books. All that's in the books. She knows it already. Like, what? What are you talking about? She's had one 5-minute lesson with Luke. And then what? You know what I mean? Like, I know some people will say, well, Luke didn't have, a lot of training and he defeated Darth Vader. And I'll say this. there was only a couple of times that you saw Luke using his lightsaber, right? Okay, so Empire Strikes Back. Vader was not trying to kill him, right? So that's
Right.
how he barely survived. Well, he didn't. I mean, as far as Vader knew, he leapt to his death. Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader was not trying to kill Luke. And then at that one point, kind of Luke, has that momentary turn to the dark side, ends up beating Darth Vader. But he never, Vader was not trying to kill Luke. So you could say, that maybe Luke was overpowered for only having maybe 1 or 2 years of training, sort of. You know what I mean? I just think that it was kind of a weird thing for Yoda to say. She knows everything. Don't worry about the books. And she ends up, saving the books or whatever happened to them because they were in the Millennium Falcon, right? So
Yeah.
I thought that was weird. I thought that was weird.
I thought
what was his exact line there? I'm trying to think. What did he say?
Exactly? I wrote it. Yoda states that Rey has all that
she needs, some of that.
She knows it all because he was all worried about the books and the end of the Jedis, and I'd have to go back, but it sounds like she.
I don't
something.
I don't know if it's you can tie like. I don't know. I kind of took it as like Yoda was like, well, whatever. I mean, the books. Did Luke use the books? Did Obi-Wan use the books? I mean, I don't know. I think he was just saying. I think he was just saying that, like, just Luke himself, as a mentor, and I just think he meant we would have if everything was going well. At least they have everything they need inside them. Is just what he's saying.
My issue is they never mentioned books in any other movie, and now there's books.
Right.
Well, you see that now. There's another interesting point, Todd, which even with I was almost at the dice. I shouldn't say it, but where things that are, in other areas like of the fandom, or I mean, if they're in novels from 30 years ago or whatever, but it's not in the movies. So that's an argument. But that's like one of the legends, like the Jedi books and stuff, and some of the EU went over some of that stuff.
But a verbal mention about the Jedi scrolls, or never came up in conversation once between Yoda, between Ben, between Luke.
Not in the films.
Not even the original trilogy. I know they had the library. I know the library where the Jedi overlooked the library, sort of thing. So you can assume, sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. Just
yeah, this is kind of what James is saying here. Biggest part with Rey that's not with Luke is subtle. He says Luke tries and fails and learns from it. Rey gets challenged but never fails. She never had to learn from any consequence. It seemed, and it's not. I think to me, it's kind of a fault with them writing. It seemed like they were in a hurry to get her from A to Z. You know what I mean? Like, oh look, she made it. She's a big Jedi and stuff like that. Where I think it was more subtle with the original trilogy, where Luke kind of got there by the end, and it wasn't anything grand. Like he wasn't lifting whole, tons of rocks and stuff. He wasn't doing mind tricks on people because he said, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like it didn't come easy for him. He was lifting one rock, sort of. He couldn't lift the X-Wing out.
I think it was a lot to do with they really struggled with the balance between the old characters and the new characters, and even some of the stuff we talked about. And like you were saying before, Steve, how Disney they at once sort of idolized the old crew and at the same time kind of crapped on them. And I think they never got the balance down. And I think they were afraid that and this is just I have no idea, but I think they were afraid if they made Rey look like weak at all, they would have taken away their importance of their number one character, because they wanted Rey to ultimately be the superstar of this. And you would have had the old Luke and Han Solo. You're never gonna top them, never gonna take them down. And I think they were afraid to show Rey really stumble and fail. And you kind of just said it too. They didn't really have much time, because they had so many characters, and they had the old cast and the new cast, and you're trying to, it was all a bit too much in a way. But that's just my own feeling about it, is that they didn't want to show Rey the girl too. They didn't want to show her weak. They didn't want to show her failing. I could be
like
wrong.
the hero's journey, right? The hero's journey, right? You learn,
Well,
you fail, and it shows. Yeah, the thing that they weren't doing was the hero's journey, right? And that ultimate triumph at the end, right? Through all the failures, mistakes, and learning, and I think that because of them not doing that with Rey, it kind of made her character a two-dimensional thing.
But you can look at like little Anakin in the Phantom Menace though too, and I tell this to people as well. Like, if you looked at Anakin, what this kid was doing, this kid's flying 600 miles an hour, winning pod races, and then he's up in space battle, and he's this little kid. So there was that to go against for Rey too. Like Anakin was just, he was supposed to be 6, right? And he's flying into space battle and he's winning races against all these creatures on the pod races and all that. He was an extraordinary little dude right out of the gate. So if you compare Rey to Luke, which is what everybody does, it's like, oh, Luke was a total mess compared, Rey, just everything comes to her. Well, if you look at Vader, if you look at Anakin, Anakin was actually pretty immune to, he was a little kid doing stuff, maybe, probably even beyond Rey at the same age.
Yeah, I never really compared Rey to Luke. I compared her to Anakin right away because, like, there was again, you're saying there wasn't enough time to develop all this stuff because why could they throw out everything they brought up in Force Awakens and start over from scratch? They didn't go off any of the key story points, right? Where they could have just picked up from there, but they didn't. They decided to change everything, which really comes down to the producer. This is Catherine Kennedy. Like, she's responsible. She's a producer. It's her ship to steer properly, and she didn't steer properly. She let everybody come in and just change the storylines, which is impossible to get a cohesive story.
Right.
And I had no problem with Rey being overpowered in the first movie. I really liked that concept. I really liked, I just think that it just got muddled in the second movie. Everything just got muddled. It kind of just really dragged the whole entire story through the mud and just kind of had a big bump which made a challenge for the next person coming in to fix the franchise.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So, man.
So did Jeremy say that he likes because Jeremy's had a lot to say. Did he actually like the movie? We know James said he liked it, but he also hated it. I want to know, Jeremy, did Jeremy like The Last Jedi? You still there, Jeremy? I would love to know. Did he say anything? Because I don't remember if he said he liked it or not.
Yeah. Anyone in the chat who is listening, let us know in the chat. Did you like it? Did you not like it? A scale of 1 to 10 Ewoks. How did you like it?
For me, this is by far to me it's the worst movie in all Star Wars franchise by far.
Right.
I am very meh. I like parts. Thanks, Jeremy.
Jeremy.
Oh, and just to throw this out, because Jeremy, you said a few things earlier too, that were cool that I just wanted to acknowledge, because we were talking about the Rey cave scene, and you suggested that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find a quote. You said something like all the different Reys could have represented all the different paths she might have taken, and that's a good thought. I like that. that hadn't occurred to me. Yeah,
if it's the case, when she snapped her fingers, it should have been something different. You know what I'm saying? Where it could have showed how they're all different, because it all followed suit. Paths. Yeah, because if it all followed suit, it's not a different path; it's the same path. Visually, right? Visually, right?
Right.
Jeremy agrees it's the worst, like me. So where do you rank this?
It 4 Ewoks.
4 Ewoks.
Out of
4
10.
Ewoks. 4 Ewoks is being very generous, I think.
Is this a scale of 1 to 10 Ewoks?
That's what you said, 1 to 10 Ewoks.
That's really, really, really tough for me with this one, man. When I first saw it, I walked out of the theater probably with like an 8 Ewok. I really, really enjoyed it the first time I saw it, while acknowledging a lot of the stuff and like with the Earthisms and stuff like that. That stuff bothered me, but some of the deeper concepts and the plot and all that didn't bother me as much the first time I saw it. I'm similar to what James is saying too, where I really responded to some of the better, what I thought were the better scenes in it. Geez, that's tough. But over time, I've come down a bit with it. And right now, The Last Jedi, geez, what do I rate it as? I'm trying to compare it to all the other ones. I don't know. I'm maybe like a 5.5 Ewok rating, something like that. 5 in between, like 5 and 6 Ewoks,
Okay.
something like that. Probably, you know what? I'll give it 6 because for all the problems we discussed, there were a lot of things that I did actually like about it. So as I'm even sitting here now, I'll go a little bit higher. I'll go 6 or 6.5 Ewoks.
Ooh. My first time watching it, the first time watching it, I would have gave it 5 Ewoks. Now after the fourth time, I'm gonna give it like a 1.5. Like every time I watch it, it gets worse every time I watch it. Like to the point where I feel like I killed brain cells watching for the fourth time. There was nothing.
If this movie was isolated, like just, and I watch movies a lot like this, there's no disputing so much of what we're talking about, like with the plots and everything. As a standalone, just sit there and watch this movie as a science fiction entertainment, my rating's actually pretty high. Like it's sort of an enjoyable movie in context of the sequel trilogy, which it has to be in. I guess I'd say it's almost a guilty pleasure movie to a certain degree with me. This one is extremely hard for me to rate.
For me, science fiction movies or science fiction kind of fantasy kind of movies, something has to happen. There was too much nothing happening.
Nothing.
The slowest space battle race of all time. No big battle gun. No hand-to-hand combat. Really. No.
Yeah.
Very underwhelming lightsaber fights. Nothing happened in this whole entire movie. Honestly, I have to watch it again. I can't remember much about it, but I probably liked it.
Todd has to watch it again.
We did watch it together. We sat down together, and my wife doesn't recall a lot of movies all the time, so I always have to explain it, what happened in the previous movie. I'm pretty sure she, even my daughter watched, and she's like, that wasn't bad, but she was on her phone half the time. But yes,
that's why.
My wife probably liked it. She probably thought it was nice, and she probably liked the Rey, the main character. Thought she was spunky or something,
Right. Well, here, first, before I give you my 1 out of 10 Ewoks, this is a little early. I'll rank all my movies, all my Star Wars movies.
We have to wait till next week.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to wait till next week, Steve.
All right.
Ranking.
I'll do that then.
Tune in next week.
I'm kind of along the lines with you, Todd, except I'm going to take a half point off. So I'll give it a 1 out of 10. Just because it's kind of the Star Wars movies that it makes me feel like I'm sitting in manure while watching it. I feel dirty. I told Todd before we went live, I said, made me feel like, I felt dirty. Like I had to, I didn't have cab money, so I had to do what I had to do. You know what I mean? Like it just, that gross feeling, like trying to get that A on a project and the pervy teacher. I don't know. It just didn't feel right. And it's really interesting. I'll quote what Sam Witwer said on, I think he was streaming a video game. Someone asked him what he thought about The Last Jedi. And he said, which I'm shocked because he still does work for Lucasfilm, that he said it felt like someone, he said it felt like a movie that was made by someone who didn't do any research on Star Wars. So, take that for what it is. And I don't know who said it in the chat earlier, but, Rian Johnson's good at making movies. He's just not good at making Star Wars movies.
Yeah, well, Knives Out, great movie. Movie. I did predict what was going to happen, but I just I would love. I've never really had a chance to sit down with a movie buff who loves the movie. I have never talked to somebody who loves the movie. Who, like the guy who says it's the best. I've heard people say, "Oh, it's the best one." We never had a chance to debate why they think. I would love to know what they saw.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't I don't know what they saw, and I don't understand what they saw. Like Jason, I thank you. I think you shed a lot of light on some things, a different perspective, which is always good to have. And I agree with a lot of things you said, and I still doesn't change my vote because I still, as a movie, don't like it at all. And the fact that I like the first, because Star Wars and had Luke Skywalker and had some touch the universe, but again, Troopers, 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 46 seconds before we saw a Stormtrooper in a Star Wars movie. Unacceptable. And dice.
And
No, I can't wait for my Father's Day cake. Dice. Aw.
Wow, that's nice.
Jeremy, man. I appreciate that, Jeremy. Thank you.
Jeremy's been drinking.
Well, it's great having these guys having James and Jeremy having a lot of input on our episode, right? And I think next week's gonna be another great episode where Todd, I used to think.
Oh, he used to think that, yeah.
The word he said is used to think it was the best.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing he has changed his mind, possibly.
Yeah, a little bit. But
I know why. Well, we could go on, I guess, with this, but I've got a couple core reasons though why it did resonate with me, for sure.
The critics had a really good score for Last Jedi too. Like, if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a decent score on Rotten Tomatoes. Fans trashed it, like with the average critic, right? Do you guys remember the score was on Rotten Tomatoes for it, by chance?
I don't.
Yeah, I'll check it out right now.
There's kind of been in the last few years or more, I've kind of put less faith in, say, critic scores, because they tend to be more access media than they are. Oh, what's the percentage?
The critics gave it 90%. Fan base gave it 42%.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And
that's a real telling for me. Like, movies, if the critics give it like a 90 or a high 90s and the fans are low, I know it's not. Like, I always try to take an average in between. Like, if they're both really similar, because I feel good about that. But usually when there's a big separation, I always lean more. After watching the movie, I always end up leaning more towards not the professional reviewers' rankings, opposed to the critics.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But episode 8 next week.
9,
right? This is 8.
Yeah, sorry. Don't make me watch this one again.
Let's do it again.
One more time.
Oh man,
Steve, you made it. You did.
I'm proud of you, Steve. I'm proud of you, because for viewers at home who are watching this right now, like, Steve was tough, so against this, and this is a really hard thing for Steve to do. Yes. Thank you, Steve, for being a team player, jumping on.
I've started drinking again. Not alcohol, but Javex. So it was really difficult. And my oldest daughter, who this movie has ruined Star Wars for, she's never watched a Star Wars movie again, is very disappointed in me. So it's going to be hard for me to get respect back from my teenage daughter.
Isn't your daughter 16? Like, isn't that just a natural?
She's 17. It's normally natural, right? But it's like disappointment for the usual, like, dad stinks, dad's jokes aren't funny, like things like that. But now dad watched this horrible movie that ruined everything for her. And
well, he had to.
Yeah, I know. And I said that, I believe in you guys, and she's like, whatever, don't do it then.
Peer pressure.
I can't. I gotta do this, but
you gotta do it.
It was so. I gotta take some Tylenol.
Well, we talked for an hour and a half. Like, and we just scratched the surface. Really, scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But thanks
it could have got uglier. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, and make sure you check us out at StarWarsReporter.com. Follow us on social media, and we'll talk to you later. And we'll leave you with some Ben Swallow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Chicka wow wow. Chicka wow wow.